right. Good morning, afternoon, etc. to everyone across all of our ATSU campuses and across the country, because I know we have a lot of people watching in from everywhere. So welcome to the 2025 Martin Luther King celebration. We are super excited to have an alumni of KCOM and a GPS scholar of the Diversity and Inclusion Department here to speak today. He's all the way from New York, so we're super excited he got away from cold weather to come to colder weather. But yes, we won't delay anymore. I will allow Dr. Megafu to take the stage and go ahead and start with his presentations for this year's Martin Luther King ceremony. So let's give a round of applause for Dr. Megafu.
All right, can you guys hear me? Everybody hears me? All right, perfect. First and foremost, I just want to thank the faculty, the leadership of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office, the ATSU family. I want to really give a warm welcome and also extend my gratitude to them for giving me the opportunity to be here. And I thank all the people that are here today to join me and all the people listening on Zoom. Really appreciate it for this opportunity. And I hope you guys learned something and are inspired by the legacy of Dr. King. All right. So a little bit about me. I'm from New York originally. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, moved to Jamaica, Queens. I played basketball at Nazareth Regional High School. I went to for my high school education, played basketball, thought I was decent enough, and then I got to play basketball for college at St. Joseph's University. And I've always been involved in church. I played a couple instruments, primarily the piano, and I was fortunate to score a lot of points in college. Scored about 1,000 points in college, and it was nice. And I tried to fuel that passion for basketball and coach after graduating from the university at St. Joseph's, and then moreover, I'm very, very grateful and appreciative for my wife. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here because she's at work, but I she has been my biggest support system, my best friend, my everything, and I'm so grateful to God for giving her to me. A couple months ago, right, in May 2024, graduated from A.T. Still University, Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. This was a couple pictures from the awards banquet and I was fortunate to have my in-laws who are also watching as well. Very grateful for their time as well. And I was able to have them celebrate this awesome achievement with me. After matching in March, I was able to match at University of Connecticut, home of the Huskies, and now I'm currently an orthopedic surgery resident at UConn. So my goal is to reveal Dr. King's dream. I think a lot of times when we talk about folk of the past, the legacies of people in the past, I think sometimes we misinterpret and we forget what they stood for and why it's important. And my job today is to kind of like tie his legacy and what his dream was and how it's relevant today. I also want to explain the impact of some of the laws that's been passed regarding affirmative action and diversity and what that looks like and how that's affecting our healthcare today. My goal also is to highlight some of the significances of diversity and why it actually matters. And then through doing this, I plan to share my journey from medical school to residency and what that kind of looked like. And last, but more importantly, to showcase Dr. King's legacy. He was a reverend, he was a father, he was a leader, and he was a friend to many. And my goal today is to kind of honor him with this talk and to highlight the significant accomplishments he's made for me to even be in the position I'm in today. Dr. King once said, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. What is your dream?" Dr. King always said, life's most persistent and urgent question is what are you doing for others? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was born on January 15th, 1929. Today, he will be 96 years old. He died at the age of 39 on April 4th, 1968. He's given so many speeches, including his most infamous I Have a Dream speech. But he also gave speeches such as I've Been to the Mountaintop, Letter from the Birmingham Jail, the acceptance of the Nobel Peace Prize on December 10th, 1964. But his famous speech, I Have a Dream, I kind of want to hone in on that for the highlight of my topic today. 5 years before his death, he stood in front of thousands and proclaimed what he thought was his vision. He proclaimed a vision of equality. Dr. King's dream was centered on equality and it's still relevant today. It was the culmination and the intersection of justice, diversity, and equity in medicine and outside of it. His dream, he said, I have a dream that one day little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with the little white boys and the little white girls as brothers and sisters. And this dream, I have been fortunate to be a part of it. And this dream has been centered on giving everybody a fair and equal chance, a fair and equal opportunity to achieve. These may be some familiar faces that you may have seen before. The faces of Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Ahmaud Arbery. These are people that were on the receiving end of the injustices that occurred due to their race. Philando Castile, he was fatally shot by a police officer during a traffic stop. He was reaching for his license, and he told the officer that he had a legally licensed firearm. Despite that, video footage showed that him being next to his wife, as he reached for his license, he was shot several times. Trayvon Martin, he was a young teenager that was racially profiled for having an Arizona bottle and some Skittles, but he had a black hoodie on at that time. Breonna Taylor, she was actually in her own home, and they forced entry into her home and gunned her down. George Floyd, he was suspected by a store clerk for using a counterfeit $20 bill. And the officers, when they arrested him, they had him. He was unrestrained, and he was in the custody of the police officer. Yet the police officer used his knee to apply pressure to his neck for over 9 minutes, which cut the circulation and the oxygenation, leading to his immediate death. Eric Garner, he was in the restraints of the police officer already, and he told the police officer he couldn't breathe, but the police officer still applied the chokehold. Sandra Bland, actually, they instituted the Sandra Bland Act because she was a prisoner. She was arrested from a traffic stop, 3 days later found to commit suicide in her jail cell. And now the Sandra Bland Act allows prisoners to access mental health care. Ahmaud Arbery, he was jogging in his own neighborhood in Georgia, and it was a very affluent neighborhood. But unfortunately, two men thought it fit to kill him. And it took more than 2 months for the men that were involved, despite all the footage that showed the two men, it took almost 2 months for them to even be arrested. These are some of the injustices of the many people that have went through some of the racial injustices, the racial discriminations that they faced. And unfortunately, many of them died for it. But this is just a few people. The sad part is that this is what you see. You see this accomplished doctor. You see this, this affluent, very well-versed, very thoughtful person. But unfortunately, America doesn't see it like that. America sees me as this, a black man in a hood. When I walk in the night, most likely the person that I'm walking next to will cross the street because they're afraid. What people see is they see a kid that they look at the color of my skin and automatically make assumptions that I'm not educated or I'm not well versed. When I was in 8th grade, I went to New Grace Christian High School, and the junior high school is about 7 minutes away from like the elementary school. And one day on my journey back from the high school, from the junior high school, usually we always walked to the main campus, which was 7 minutes away. And one day, it's about 30 students. We're walking to the other campus because of the after-school program that's there. And as we're walking, 4 officers come out. They stop the teachers that are escorting us, and all eyes are on me. I look at them and I'm saying, like, I'm just, a regular 14-year-old kid that, just looking to see, not thinking of anything, oblivious to what this is. And they approached me and they told me that a high school teenage girl just lost her phone. And I matched the description of the suspect with my hoodie, being semi-tall, and of course, being a Black male. This is the reality of what being Black looks like in America. And no one talks about the difficulty and the psychological stressors that Black people or people from underrepresented backgrounds face. But I'm grateful that I was able to graduate medical school and to come to a really good program here at ATSU with the support, the love, the community from faculty, from the DEI office, from many people. And that was a culmination of them, with the help of God, of course, to bring me over to where I am today. But enough about me. When we talk about diversity, what are we talking about? Or DEI, what does that even mean? Well, we're focusing on creating an environment that is safe for all people, despite their backgrounds, despite what they identify as, right? And diversity specifically focuses on taking these backgrounds and all the different identities that people identify as and bring them together. And equity provides equal access for everyone. It's providing them equal opportunities as well. And inclusion is creating that environment so that the diversity and the equity can exist. A lot of times we focus on people and we say, oh, this is the minority group. Words are actually very, very powerful. They've been coined to describe different people at different times. There's terms. The word minority is a term for class, a caste. It's an identity. It identifies the ethnicity. It's a racial construct that's been used. Sometimes it's even referred to as a slang or a slur. Out of all the words we chose to classify underrepresented people, we chose the word minority. We know the N-word, right? Obviously, I'm not going to say it because of the professionalism that I'm supposed to portray. But if someone says the N-word, it doesn't take anybody to realize how insulting that is, especially when it's going from someone that may not be a minority to a person who's Black. But the N-word is not just only a word. It's not a word that just hurts my ears. There's other words that does the same thing too. But why do we use the word minority? I kind of want to explain how I feel about this, because I think a lot of times we don't understand the gravity of what we say. If you look at newspapers, look at this thing about affirmative action. It's minorities. Oh, it's just a way to get minorities into the institution, right? People may say it's nothing like the N-word, it's just the M word. But it's actually intrinsically condescending. I remember when I first got accepted into ATSU, and during my I was part of the GPS scholarship health science program, and the now president, chief diversity officer, Mr. Clinton Normore, I remember he would say, don't use the word minority. He would say, use the word HUGS, or the acronym HUGS, which is historically underrepresented groups. And I think it's a better term. And that was where I actually changed my connotation and my language to emulate that. I'm not lesser because I'm Black, nor is anyone that's from any different culture. And let's make no mistake, it's specifically for people of color who were envisioned as minorities. Because you cannot argue that the word is simply used to denote groups who are smaller in number than the equally vague majority. Think about it. We don't refer to people from LGBTQIA+ as minorities. We call them underrepresented. So why is it that we don't do the same for people that don't look like the majority? So when I talk about these terms, equality, equity, justice, the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of obstacles that every different person faces. Some of them tend to be systemic biases. And as a result, it creates the disparities or the differences that people see. And you have a couple terms that we like to refer to in the sciences. Equality is the assumption that everyone benefits from the same support. It's so that everyone can have equal treatment. But as we can see from the sketch here, just because everyone gets equal treatment doesn't mean that everyone gets the best outcomes. And we move to a form of equity where everyone gets the support that they need. But even when people get the support that they need, it may not be just, because we just give them the support, but we don't deal with the actual inequity. And that's where justice comes in. Dr. King stood for justice because he wanted us to remove the inequities that came to people that look like me, that from people from underrepresented groups, women, LGBTQIA plus people, etc. And these are some of the terms that we use so that we can communicate what we're trying to. These are a couple studies that show why diversity matters. Research studies show that patients have better outcomes when they're in racially concordant physician-patient relationships. And representation helps bring trust. Think about it. Being an African-American male, maybe in the 60s, 70s, after hearing what your fathers and grandfathers and grandmas and mothers went through, it's very difficult for them to trust that very healthcare system that has defrauded them in years past. So the research shows that when a Black physician is meeting with a Black patient, they tend to listen more, they tend to understand more, they tend to relate more than the white counterpart. Many people will look at this and say, well, that's just, a couple studies that show that. That doesn't really mean anything. But unfortunately, what's happening now is that the law is even trying to ban DEI, not only in colleges, but in medical schools. With the information I just told you, I hope you will understand how detrimental that will be to the population that we are trying to treat. When we look at maternal mortality rates, this is a known statistic, but it's disproportionately higher in Black women. Why? For many years, it's been like this. This is just from 2021 to 2022. But guess what? It's been like that over the past 5-6 years. It hasn't changed. Oh, Mike, I think they may have lessened it a little bit. Oh, it went from 69% in 2021 to 2022 of 49.5%. And that's probably inflated due to the effects of COVID. But be it as it may, this is still a systemic issue that we're still facing today. When you look at the white counterparts, you see that it's disproportionately lower. So what does this tell us? We see that there is an issue with race and that health disparities depend on the fact that we need to acknowledge that these inequities are real. This is a study looking at the surgical mortality in the United States based off of race, comparing to Black and white people. And when you look at all the surgical procedures that are being done, these are 8 of the most common cardiovascular and cancer procedures. And all but lung resection show statistically significant differences in the mortality rates. Why am I giving you all this? Because medicine is based off evidence. And we need to see that these disparities and these differences are affecting our health outcomes. Why does race matter? Why is this something that we're harping at? Because physicians are actually twice as likely to underestimate pain in Black patients than in all other ethnicities in emergency department. If a Black patient is to ask for some type of opioid, physicians are less likely to give it to them than to give it to the white counterpart. One of the studies here, the second one, 222 medical students and residents were interviewed, and 12% of them thought that Black people had nerve endings that were less sensitive than white people. That doesn't exist. We all are made the same. Yeah, we have more pigmentation, but we should have the same amount of nerve endings, and the anatomy may be a little bit different, but that shouldn't change. But the perception of these medical students and residents were as such. 58% reported that they thought that Black people's skin was actually thicker than white people's. These are residents, medical students. This is what they are thinking. And this is only in 222. You may say, oh, the sample size is smaller. But I guarantee you, if we upped it by 100 times, it will still be the same thing. So why are these things existing? Oh, maybe because I'm a doctor, maybe things will change. No. Dr. Susan Moore, she was a graduate of the University School of Medicine at Michigan, class of 2002. She died on December 20, 2020. And she died, due to COVID, but she asked for pain medication. And the doctor did not give it to her when she was at Indiana University. In fact, she made a video, she went viral for recording the interaction, and she said, and I quote, what is it going to take to get equitable care in America? This is a doctor. So if it can happen to her, it can happen to me. And that's the reality of the health inequities that we see. And unfortunately, many don't see it like that. Many see me as a sign of affirmative action. And what happened is that, affirmative action, the whole purpose of it was to give equal opportunity. That's what equity is about, right? Giving people access and the opportunity to have those positions. And unfortunately, what's happened is that there has been this misconception of what affirmative action is. So there's a study that came out in 2008, and it showed the advantages of what affirmative action is versus the disadvantages. And, you can read the advantages. I won't really go through that. But when we look at the disadvantages, I was very intrigued and mind-boggled by the last two. The disadvantages of affirmative action, or why people don't want it, is because it uses resources on people who are not committed. That is what they say. Or it's not merit-based. People that apply to medical school and all these higher institutions, they clearly are capable if they're applying. They take the same exams. Research shows that they tend to have lesser scores, especially with standardized test taking. But you have to think about that psychology. Why is it such? Maybe they came from areas that did not allow them to develop. For me, I didn't go to an affluent institution for high school. We struggled in my high school. There were times that we had to share books because we didn't have enough. And that was a Catholic school, right? But we don't think about that. We just think about the MCAT cutoff is a 500. They have a 497. We reject them. We move on. So aren't we propagating the same inequities that the society has deemed and created for such people? And unfortunately, in June 2023, the Supreme Court decided to remove this law of affirmative action, and it ended any race-conscious admission. Now, why is this important? Because now we create a lack of access for people of underrepresented backgrounds to receive the ability or the opportunity to be in the same spaces as their white counterparts. Black matriculants actually decreased this past year in 2024. This past year, Black matriculants decreased by 12%. And Hispanic matriculants decreased by 11% compared to last year. 1 year after this bill was passed. This affirmative action was made by JFK. You know, with the march in 1963, where Dr. Luther King said his speech. The next year, they institute the Civil Rights Act of 1964, giving everybody equal opportunities. But there were still biases that occurred. There were still differences. There were still obstacles that destroy the equity for such people. And there's a famous Supreme Court case, the Regents of UC Davis Medical School versus Alan Bake in 1978, where Alan Bake actually sued the university because the university had 100 spots and they used 16 of their spots to hold and to admit underrepresented backgrounds. And even though he was more qualified than those 16, he got rejected not once, but twice. And he went to the Supreme Court for that. Is that the new norm? Are people going to be able to just go to the Supreme Court because they didn't get in and use race as an excuse? Especially now that affirmative action is gone. But this is what Dr. King was going back to, right? The March on Washington in 1963, when he gave that speech, this is what he was talking about. He was making sure that efforts like the one in June doesn't exist. But 60 years later, despite the march, despite the multiple speeches that he made, despite the shoulders of him and many others that went before and after, all those efforts were wasted with that one decision. And Mike, you may say, you may ask me, well, how do we know? It's only been 1 year. Well, like I said before, right? Black enrollees, 12% decrease in admissions from 2023 to 2024. American Indian, Alaska Natives, 22%. Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, 4%. We've lost people from historically underrepresented backgrounds. And remember, racially concordant relationships, patients do better in. Now we're losing that. So what happens? We have fewer students applying now because people are scared, right? In 2024 to 2025, 51,946 people applied. We've found the mark, finally. It's been like 4 years now, where we've enrolled more women than men in medical school. We finally got that. But even still, men and women are not applying to medical school anymore. And like I said before, we've lost in all categories, we've lost, except for the majority groups. Last year, April, I was able to write a paper, kind of share my perspective on where the Black men in osteopathic medicine. I graduated, I was the only Black man in my class. And I stand tall and proud to say that. And unfortunately, what's happening is that medical schools in general, we are falling behind when it comes to enrolling Black people. And time will fail to go into all the statistics that you can see, but we see that we, especially as an osteopathic DO schools across the country, from 2015 to 2023, the class size, the percentage of Black people, men and women in the class, has consistently been less than 6%. So what does that tell us? We need to do better. And in the paper, what has been a common theme is that a lot of the colleges of the medicine, whether it's the AACOM or the AMC, there have been a lot of quotas on diversity, right? So AACOM, which is the DO institution that governs through COCA, which is the accreditation union, they said that colleges that partner with this organization must achieve diversity among qualified applicants for medical school and have a strategic plan for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And then when you look at the MD counterparts, right, through the LCME, they have to make admission to medical education more accessible to potential applicants of diverse backgrounds. So despite all of these things that has been passed for many years, we still struggle to enroll people from underrepresented backgrounds. So what can we do? We can partner with each other, with institutions that support diversity, and help create bridges and pipeline programs to accommodate that. Luckily at ATSU, we figured that out, and we have the Dreamlines Pathway program, right? Which is great. But across the globe, there's been a lot of organizations that figured this out, and I've realized that if we can make the access to medicine and present it to groups at younger ages at an earlier time with people that look like them, they're more likely to enroll in those professions. So we figured it out. And these are a couple of the programs that I was able to join to help me successfully match into orthopedics. That's why all of this is like all orthopedics, not medicine in general. It's all orthopedics. But we need to be these faces of change. And if we partner with these institutions, we too can be part of those faces of change. Dr. Alexa Irina Kennedy, she was the first Black woman neurosurgeon in the US, and she specialized in pediatric neurosurgery. She was the chief of neurosurgery at the Children's Hospital in Michigan from 1987 to 2001. Dr. Robert Gladden, he was the first orthopedic surgeon, the first Black orthopedic surgeon in the US, and he graduated from Howard. Dr. Claudia Thomas, she was the first Black female orthopedic surgeon in the US. Dr. Benjamin Carson, he was the first Black chief of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, or I should say at the Johns Hopkins University, and was the youngest chief of surgery there. Dr. Daniel Hale, he was the first doctor, and he's also the first Black doctor, but also the first doctor to ever successfully perform open heart surgery. And he was the first doctor / person to find the first Black-owned hospital in America. So these are all heroes of healthcare. And I'm able to stand on them because they stood on Dr. King's mission. And guess what? You could be that hero too, all right? You can be just as successful. You can make a change and be great. But you have to put that work in. You have to realize that there are challenges that are there and find ways to systematically address each of them one at a time. For me, I knew that I wanted to do orthopedics. But when I looked at the websites for orthopedics, this is what I see. I don't see anybody that looks like me. In fact, the first time I actually saw a Black orthopedic surgeon was when I actually got into medical school. So when I see this on every website that I apply to, or as I'm looking through programs, I'm really asking myself, is orthopedics for me? My mind shifted away from the specialty and more so into the place where I'm going to practice. Am I going to be supported in a place that for people that look like me? And if you look at all these people, unfortunately, all you see is tall white males. Black physicians in orthopedics, they make less than 2%. And in the United States, in the United States, Black doctors make less than 5% of physicians. So is this something I really want to do? And after really looking in and doing some soul searching, I realized that, yeah, it is something I want to do, but I had to overcome some barriers. So people that are interested in orthopedics, listen up. Orthopedics is a very difficult specialty to match into. You can have the highest scores, have the best grades, and still not match. And for me, I saw that there was not only the barrier of being Black, but also the barrier of being a DO in the United States was also something that was a strike against me. So I'm looking and I'm saying these challenges of being a DO, being a Black DO, not having a home orthopedic program here, it puts me in the negative. So at least people may say. But when I looked at this and I saw the match rates and saw all these things, it's so easy to get boggled down. You know, and just a couple of papers for those interested in ortho, right? Away rotations are so important. 57% of applicants match either at their home institution or where they did a sub-I or an away rotation. And if you do an away rotation, it increases your chances of matching there by 50%, which is pretty good odds, right? And unfortunately, not only did I have to deal with being black or being a DO, but institutions will intentionally make it more expensive for DO applicants to rotate at those sites, particularly the MD ones. So this merger that came, the ACGME, they came together and they said, well, we want to make sure that DOs and MDs have equal access and equal opportunities. So as such, let's create let's stop the individual institutions and let's make one accredited union, which is the ACGME. But unfortunately, people were still figuring out how to make life hard. The NBOME actually reached out to the senior author for this paper because they realized that people were paying, DOs were paying like $5,000 versus $500 to the MD. What am I trying to say? It's hard. Having to deal with this, looking at all these things made it really challenging for me to really say if I wanted to do orthopedics. I remember when I was applying for a research fellowship, this is not my letter, but this is something that has been happening where people will apply and they'll say, oh, they'll give you all the application stuff and they'll look through it and they'll like you and they will want to take you. And then they realize that your school has College of Osteopathic Medicine attached to it. And then they'll slap a nice rejection. And that happened to me too. I remember my first year, I was applying for a really prestigious research fellowship in orthopedics. And they reached out to me, they interviewed me. I thought I was going to be good. And all of a sudden I get an email. And maybe I should have put a picture of that. Got an email saying, oh, you can't do it. Sorry, you're DO. What does that mean? So having to deal with that, right? Less than 50% of DOs who apply into orthopedic surgery actually match into orthopedic surgery. And in 2023, only 7 DOs who did not match in previous years matched into orthopedics compared to 69 of our MD counterparts. So it just shows so much staggering differences and so much disparities. Oh, there's more. In 2021, like I said, former AOA programs, which was the DO residency side, they are much more likely to have MD residents than to have former ACGME programs admit DO students. So now there's less spots. Now there's more work to do, more to overcome. It's not just having a good STEP score or a good COMLEX score that's going to be good enough, or having a good quartile rank that's good enough. And this is just buttressing the point that I made before, right? That historically DO programs were more likely to admit MD students than historically MD programs admitting DO students. And as a result, the match rate suffered for former osteopathic programs. And it made it really difficult for DO students to match successfully. So why do I say this? Because this is the internal struggles that I was going through. Like, I really like orthopedics, but do I think I can thrive in an environment that looks like this? And at first I was naive and I didn't know, but luckily through the help of people, mentors, allies, people that look like them, but are understanding the importance of having people from these underrepresented backgrounds, they were able to help me to matriculate to where I am today. And I'll be forever grateful to them. But representation and having a sense of belonging matters. That's what I experienced here. I had a sense of belonging. I had faculty, I had people, Stephanie, she's right here. Like, I had people that would support me, right? And I knew I belonged, but that means so much. And there was a response that I wrote to the editor. And one thing I highlighted was that despite all the challenges of being orthopedics and not looking like them and not having, you know, the maybe the status and the connections that others may have, I was still committed to pursuing a career in orthopedics. And I remember writing this letter, and this was written in 2023. So this is before the match results came out. And I was like, this is bold, Mike, because this is published. And if someone looks at it and says, oh, so you're interested in orthopedics, I'm done, right? If I apply to another specialty. But that's what makes faith, right? And as Dr. King said, faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. And the first step for me was just to acknowledge that this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to achieve this goal. Dr. King did it. He spoke, and he wanted equality for everybody. And we're better than what we were before, but we're not there yet. And that's okay, because we're taking steps to get to that spot. And that's what I had to realize, that I had to have faith in myself and be the biggest advocate of myself. So started with the Medical Education Fellowship. And I got it. Dr. Trisha's there. Thank you so much. And my other two moms, Lisa Archer and Dr. Kondrashova, right? They helped me understand who I am and see who I am to get to the level that I need to be. And I realized that I could do it. There's no research or orthopedic residency here, but that's fine. Me and my little brother, Manny, who's watching, shout out to you, Manny, we wrote 2 papers by ourselves with no attendings, and we was able to publish in really good journals some really good work. And this was where I noticed that, man, I think I could do this. Like, it's not impossible. It may be hard, and the obstacles may be challenging, but it's definitely doable. Then during that time, I began to work at First Baptist Church and really volunteer my time to community service and also playing the piano there. And then not only that, I was able to teach at the Northeast Christian High School and volunteer some time during my medical education fellowship. That's why the medical education fellowship is the best one, all right, for the second years, right? That's why it's the best one. I was able to do all of these things, but ultimately I knew that my path was already written because God was in the midst. He may not look like that, but you guys get the point. And the Bible, which Dr. Martin Luther King very solemnly held onto, Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." So I knew that I was in good hands, but it's hard when you don't see the full staircase. And I spoke to some of the Ortho Club members yesterday, but Arthur Ashe, very, very good tennis player, he utilized a quote that I will always forever hold on to. It says, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. There's no more excuses. You can't say, I told the Ortho Club, you can't say because I don't have an ortho residency attached to ATSU that I can't do it. That's not an excuse, because people before you have done it. You can't say, oh, I don't have, or we don't have the resources to do ABC, or to matriculate a certain percentage, or to offer scholarships for some. We have the resources, but it's whether we're willing to utilize it. And Gandhi says, be the change you want to see in the world. So I knew I got to be the change, and I teamed up with a couple of my brothers, Speechly, shout out to you. And we started a pipeline for research with the Orthopedic Club. Because when I was an orthopedic, when I was a second year and a first year, I didn't have access to orthopedic research from orthopedic residents. So I wanted to be that change. And we have clubs like SNMA and NMA that kind of help, SNDA, that kind of help bring this mentorship and this allyship opportunities that will help foster us to address these changes. And now what you guys see is like the slide I had before. This is what everybody sees. Oh my gosh, Mike, you're awesome. Student Doctor of the Year. That's so cool. You're GPS Scholar. You're amazing, right? But they didn't see this. And the Ortho Club people will know. 34% on my first anatomy exam. And I want to be a surgeon. I don't know where the teres minor attaches. It's terrible. And I applied to medical school 3 times. No one sees that. What everyone sees is this, all the successes, all the glories, and the accolades. It makes me look good. Everybody looks good. You know, we all look good, right? Shout out to ATSU, right? But we don't see this, right? And unfortunately, you see this, right? The tears that shed when I couldn't travel back because of COVID. I couldn't go and see my family all the time because I live in New York. So to take a flight, back then it was the tiny airplane. Now the airplane is like bigger now. For the people that take the Kirksville flight, it's bigger now. It's better if you have a flight attendant. But yeah, one flight attendant. But 3 times a year, I had to see my family. So from July all the way to May, I only see my family a couple times. And that was hard. Not seeing my family, not seeing my fiance at the time, who's now my wife. And I knew, and not only that, I spent an extra year in Kirksville, even though I had all this time, right? I did not get to see my family all the time because it's just expensive. But despite that, I was able to overcome those odds. So because of that, I learned to be better. I learned to understand who I am as a person. And applying the principles of Dr. King, I just started taking steps. And that allowed me to get even more awards, right? I got Research of the Year, Doctor of the Year at the same time, which is like never been done, which is so cool, right? I became an Elevate Med Scholar. Shout out to the Elevate Med family that's watching as well. And recently I won the Karen J. Nichols Award, which is an award for that gives to an osteopathic student that demonstrates leadership, achievement. I should know this, right? Dedication, and last but not least, excellence. So leadership, excellence, achievement, and dedication. And I have a slide on that, right? And I was able to get this cool award. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the event because of residency. I was on call. I can't switch. But I was able to go to the event, and not knowing that I was going to be able to speak at this at the MLK event today, and not even knowing what Dr. King said, but they asked me a couple questions, and I just said it. And leaders first take the time to communicate their dreams with those that they lead, and then they take actionable steps to achieve those goals. Like if you're a leader, you shouldn't be afraid to tell people your dream. And I remember when I was applying to medical school, when I was applying to orthopedic surgery residency, people be so secretive. Oh, I'm not telling you where I'm applying. I'm not telling you anything. And I remember being bold. I was like, I'm applying orthopedic surgery, guys. I'm going to be an orthopedic surgery resident. And maybe that was going to hose me. I don't know. Because if I didn't match, then what I would do, right? But you got to have faith. It goes back to what I was saying before. You may not see the full staircase, but you got to take the first step. And for me now, what's your story? What do you see yourself as? For me, I'm a trailblazer. I'm a mentor. I'm a friend. I'm an advocate. And I'm a lifelong learner. But the question is, what is your story? Where do you see yourself? What is your dream? And the famous words of Langston Hughes says, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. Yes, I remember the bell. Okay, got you. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough or that you can't do it. I remember when I was after graduating from college, not getting into medical school the first time, I decided to do a master's in medicine. And unfortunately, I had to drop out that program because my family needed money. We took on our 2 cousins into the family, and parents was like, Mike, you staying here, you got to make some money. All right. My parents, now they're rich, but at the time, they weren't rich. So I had to make my family make ends meet. And unfortunately, I had to put my dream on hold. Sacrifice my future career to help out with the family. And I will never forget being told by the professor. I still remember his name. I'm not going to say it because of, obvious reasons. But I remember his name. And I remember when I needed help in my biochemistry class. And I was like, this is hard. I don't understand it. I'll never forget him telling me that I'm not good enough. It's like, you're not good enough to get into medical school. It's like, dude, man, you don't have to tell me that to my face. You can tell me that afterwards, right? And he laughed in my face. He told me, stick to teaching. But today, I'm able to tell him that I am good enough. I'm able to burn that, right? That memory is burnt, and I use that as motivation. But always keep that dream alive. Don't anything that you can visualize, if there's when you dare to visualize a possibility within that impossible, then you uncover that hidden potential for that reality. The truth is, if there's a possibility that exists, even in the slightest degree, and it's within reach, because you imagined it, you can actually achieve it. And I didn't realize that until then, until that Med Ed fellowship, and that really changed my mindset on how I approach things. You know, even to today, I set some very, very big dreams and goals that some of my co-residents are like, no way, Mike. But they see that those goals are starting to be achieved, right? And the question is that the response I always have for them is like, if someone else could do it, why can't you? Right? If someone can be in those positions, why can't you do it? I'm not going to say that. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. What is your dream? Dr. King would always say, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? For me, it's bringing research opportunities to ATSU. It's allowing and making sure that students that are interested in orthopedics don't get discouraged by the statistics out there and see that it's a possibility that could get done. And with that being said, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to give this talk, and I hope you are inspired. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Megafu. Let me go to see if anybody has any questions. This is a great time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand. We have counterparts in Arizona. My team there has a mic, and whoever else is watching. So we'll hover for a few minutes. Does anybody in Kirksville have questions? Wow, his speech was that good? He answered all the things, no questions at all. How about my team in Arizona? Any questions? Maybe. We should have that like elevator music playing. But it's okay. So we do have some other events going on this
We
week.
do have a question in Arizona.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thanks, Clarissa. Go ahead.
Thanks, Clarissa. Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Dr. Megafu. Maybe more of just an observation, just a thank you. I recall when you came by the office your first year and you talked about the dream of orthopedic surgery, and we talked about doing a little something every day to get there. And certainly you did that, and it truly is amazing. So thank you for today's presentation, and look forward to somehow getting the word out about that opportunity to mentor our students that are interested in orthopedic surgery, and probably some that aren't necessarily orthopedic surgery, but certainly would benefit from the opportunity to talk to you and others who've gone through the experiences that you've gone through. So I just want to say thank you, and you know, all those awards you won were certainly well deserved, and just appreciate you being at ATSU, choosing us, and then continuing on. So thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Phelps. Really appreciate it. And I definitely do remember that that time I went to your office. And I appreciate you for even having your door open and taking the time to talk to a little medical student like me. And I'm happy that I was able to make you proud. And I am 100% certain that whatever opportunity that you need from me, you know, Michael's always in. So thank you so much, Dr. Phelps.
Thank you.
Ooh, we have some questions. Okay, I'm gonna get my steps in today.
Thank you so much for your time today. I think right now in our country more than ever, we're at a place where us working together and coming together as a people is important. So if you could explain a little bit about, you know, what maybe your peers during your time in medical school did to make you feel uplifted and supported, and how you uplifted and supported them, but also what can people do in these medical school cohorts to make sure that everyone is successful, because everyone is facing battles that are unseen. And some of them are overtly here, but I think it's important for us to know how we can support each other at this time too. So what are your thoughts?
Thank you. That's a very profound question. I think I would just start by simply acknowledging. I think a lot of times, especially in medical school, there's this like pretense that is placed. You know, when someone's struggling in medical school, a lot of times we hide that and we pretend to be doing better than what we thought. You know, I remember a lot of times we'll have an exam and the class average is like a 50%. But before the average comes out, everyone's like, oh, it was easy. It was like I didn't study, whatever, and they'll just lie. And then the scores will come out and they make you feel like you failed, but you did well, which means that all the other people that were talking down to you failed, right? But I think there's this false sense of not acknowledging, this false sense of security that everything is fine and kind of compartmentalizing things. Sometimes that's to our disadvantage. And I think we need to understand that everybody's in the thick of it, right? From despite not only in medical school, all the different schools, every situation, every person has their own battle that they're facing. And I think just simply acknowledging that there is a battle that you're facing and that it's okay to need help. It's okay to cry out for help. Dr. King didn't just be the person that he is by himself. There were other people that went before him. The boycotts that he was doing. Rosa Parks was one of the pioneers before that even was a big thing. We stand on the shoulders of other people as well. So I think a lot of times we need to come together. It's okay to cry. It's okay to fail. And if we understand that it's okay and we always show love to our fellow brother and sister, I think we'll make the world a better place. And I think it will be easier for us to confide in the community that we serve.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, question on the screen. If you had this experience, how did you or your residency address microaggressions and implicit bias as a medical student and currently?
I think so UConn is a great institution for those, medical students watching, apply. It's a great institution. I think it really shows and it really prioritizes wellness, diversity, and actually listening to us as a resident. No one ever looks at the color of my skin or utilizes that as a way to like undermine me or undercut me. All the faculty, they're all nice. They're all kind to me. So I've been fortunate to not have that experience at UConn. However, I remember being here in Kirksville and unfortunately having those experiences. I'll go to Walmart and people will like follow me because of the color of my skin. Even one of my classmates, unfortunately, passing away due to some mental health issues that stemmed from that as well, from microaggression. So I to answer the question, I've been very fortunate in the places I've been to have a great support system. And unfortunately, not everyone is as fortunate. But I think the way that like ATSU has helped me was just showing support, just being there. And I think the fact that you are there, even if you're not looking like me, but you're an ally, you're supporting, you're always willing to help, you're always willing to open your door to have a conversation, I think that goes a long way. And I think if you create that opportunity, that avenue to have that discussion, I think it alleviates a lot of the burden that such people going through such things may be experiencing.
Thank you for that. And Benny, who is a classmate of mine, we're about to graduate soon. Woo! She had a comment that said, "Thank you for addressing the fact that minority should not be used. It is a dismissive term. The HUG acronym is better. Awesome job." And then we do have Dr. Obadia who raised her hand. Do you want to hop on and ask your question or make your comment, Dr. Obadia?
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Dr. Megafu. I'm also a Kirksville grad, class of 97. And I'm the Dean of ATSU-SOMA here in Mesa. And my question for you is, what would you like, is there one thing you would like to tell a dean of a medical school, of an osteopathic medical school, about HUG students that would really, really help them?
This is a good question. This hits home. It's funny because I remember when I was interviewing for my medical education fellowship, Dr. Sexton asked me like, what is something I really want to achieve growing up? And I was always telling her like, I want to be a dean of a medical school. Like I want to be a dean. I want to be a dean. I want to be a dean. But now it comes like full circle. Like, oh, what would you do as a dean? Oh, that's a hard question. But if there's one thing I think I would really advocate for, I think it would be to making sure the class looks like the population we're treating. I think as a dean, I think it's you have a lot of power. You have the ability to create the admissions committees and to make sure that you intentionally are seeking students who are qualified, of course, but that look like the population that we're trying to treat. I think that if we create, if we destroy the barriers that that we utilize, like MCAT scores, and say like, hey, you have to have a 508 and 509. And if we don't look at the full application, which I think that's something that we're doing with holistic, I think holistic approaches are now a new thing. But I remember when I was applying, I think a lot of times it was like, if you don't meet that cutoff, it's automatic rejection. And unfortunately, we propagate those systemic biases. So I think as a dean, if there was a way to kind of blind the interviewers, not to look at scores, not to look at where people come from, and just have a conversation with them, and then utilize that as a big or a majority of their score in applying for medical school, I think that's what I would do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All great questions. Oh, another question in Kirksville.
Thank you for your talk today. It has been absolutely amazing. I love this. I think it is really unfortunate that you had to experience several things that you just mentioned during your time here in Kirksville. And we can talk about all the sports that you can have here on campus, but I'm curious as to what community sports do you wish you would have had during your time here in Kirksville?
Yeah, I think it would have been nice to be closer to family. But I believe in God. I'm a firm believer of God. I had a lot of support from my church family here at First Baptist Church and also back home, Deeper Life Bible Church. So I had a lot of people praying for me, reaching out to me to encourage me when I was down. So I don't know if I would honestly change anything because I felt like I had a great support system. But I think the one thing I would always try to encourage is that people, we seek people that are struggling, not only in academics, but just in their life. If you notice personality changes, not being afraid to like go and ask someone about their well-being. I think a lot of times there's this like, what's the word I'm looking for? There's this like bad omen that, anytime someone is struggling, like, or we throw the word mental health, the stigma, that's the word I'm looking for. There's so much stigma that it's associated with like mental health that we kind of like ignore and not try to reach out to people. But I think that's okay. Even if they're doing well, just checking on somebody every once in a while, I think that's more than enough. I think people want to be heard and would love people to be there, and just being there alone, I think will create a lot of the alleviate a lot of the weight that they may be feeling.
Yes, we have another question in Kirksville. That one slide.
Oh yeah.
And we're also going to put a QR code. So if you can fill that out, because I know some people are leaving. Let me get another question in Kirksville.
Welcome back, Michael. It's good to see you, Dr. Megafu. Sorry I was late. I was at ortho with my 91-year-old mother having an ejection today. But I'd like to know, you've achieved so much. What is next on your plate that you're excited about in achieving with your residency and your career? You may have shared this already, but I'd like to hear it.
That's Lori, you put me on the spot. What's next? I think being a great resident. I'm going into from intern year where they're kind of babying me and holding my hand and how to do this and how to do this, to being the first person and the only orthopedic physician in the level 1 trauma center, taking call and seeing the emergency department patients. That's exciting, scary, but it's also one of those steps that I need to take. And I'm excited, more importantly, about the future. I think from my wife and hopefully expanding our family one day to being able to give back to, seeing ortho interested students matching into orthopedics, whether it's at UConn or somewhere. And just being a great mentor, being able to share my story and inspire people. Because I remember when I was in their shoes, it's very daunting from the exams, maybe not scoring as high as I want, not being the quartile I want, not getting the scores I want, the grades I want. But I'm looking forward to being able to like show people that it is possible, and to give people a way out. Yeah.
And then can you go to the next slide? Sorry, Michael. Dr. Megafu. Sorry. Okay, we have another question.
So Vanessa and I work over at Truman, and so my question is in relation to undergrad students. what supports did you have as an undergrad student that allowed you to visualize and hold on to your dream, or did you wish that you had during that time?
Yeah, so I could give both. Support. I remember our school would actively seek out like admissions committees and personnel from admissions committees to come and give a talk to like the science club at the undergrad institutions. Unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of people going to like medicine. We had a lot of like PhD and research people, which is fine, right? But it was kind of hard to like see and realize that like dream because I didn't see that. So what I kind of wish was that I had people like me who can go and reach out to people from like the undergrad campus that's down the street, right? And be able to have conversations with them. He's not here, but Monzi was like that person where I was a medical student and I was like, hey, I want to be that person that I didn't have, and I'll reach out to him. And now he's a medical student here, right? So I think being able to have that mentorship group or in having those connections would have went a long way. And I think that's what we're trying to do. Where like people who graduated and they can come back and kind of like create those connections with people who are interested in those specialties, and even further extend it to people who are interested in medicine and would like someone to talk to about like AT still, or even just medicine in general.
Stephanie, we have a chat from Emmanuel. What advice would you give to pre-meds and medical students who want to advocate for D, E, and I in their future careers?
Yeah, I would say you can't hit a home run without hitting the ball, without using a bat, right? You can dream of hitting a home run, but unless you have a bat and you make contact with the ball, you can never get a home run. I use that analogy to say is it's great to have such goals, but you gotta get into medical school first, right? If you want to be the change that you want to see, you got to be able to sit on the table. I wanted to be the change in orthopedics, so I was able to graduate successfully and then able to match. And now I can start trying to implement changes one step at a time. So if you want to be able to realize those goals, then you got to get into medical school. And I think when you get into medical school, then there's clubs and opportunities from SNDA, SNMA, and a whole bunch of clubs that will help foster you with the connections, the networking, and the mentorship that you need to achieve those goals.
And for your SNMA and SNDA, Student National Medical Association, Student National Dental Association, and you can actually get involved in undergrad with those as well and transfer into whatever secondary school you go to.
Yeah, that what Stephanie said.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Wow. Well, Michael did great. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Michael, for I keep doing that. Dr. Megafu, for your time. I know you're on a strict schedule.